And what did you think about when the president was over in Saudi Arabia standing and addressing 50 Muslim leaders of the world?
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because that was pretty bold.
No, I mean, look, the contrast between this current administration in terms of sanity versus what we dealt with the past 8 years. Just look at this issue in Manchester. Okay, the mayor of Manchester, immediately after this terrorist attack, immediately declared that this one young gentleman that was arrested, the initial gentleman, he was not a Muslim. He had to come out and say he was not a Muslim, as if some probably secular British mayor has the right to define what Islam is and who's a Muslim and who's not. Now, according to this young man, he was a Muslim. He had openly hung an ISIS flag on his house. He had several Muslims, more moderate Muslims in his community, report him to the authorities multiple times. Now, were they Islamophobes? They were Muslims. They reported him for radical behavior. The authorities did nothing. Why? Because the problem is not simply radical Islam. The problem is this politically correct, irrational zombie spirit that is possessing world leaders, this politically correct spirit that's coming over people where they can't acknowledge the reality of that which is killing little 15-year-old girls at a concert by the truckload at this point. And so now we have a president who finally, President Obama, it was a White House policy. We will not call it Islamic terrorism. We will not use any of those terms. President Trump stood before the leaders, the presidents and kings of 50-plus Muslim nations, and he actually called it Islamic extremism, Islamic terrorism. Supposedly that was off cue. It just sort of came out. But he called them to the carpet, and he demanded accountability. Now, if we are ever going to defeat or come against radical Islamic terrorism, we have to at least be able to call it for what it is. But this denialism, because it's sort of blasphemy to ever say that, well, Islam might have something inherently violent in its doctrines, in its history, in its example of Muhammad, clearly it does. That's blasphemy, because the spirit of the age, the religion of the age, is religious pluralism, multiculturalism. And it's blasphemy to say that any culture or any religion is inferior to any others. And the bottom line is, again, as Americans, I forget who it was who said it, democracy is the worst form of government, except for every other one. In other words, until Jesus comes back, this is the best. What we have in the United States, we've fallen short in many different ways. Okay, I understand that, but what we have here in the United States is the best thing that we are ever going to see until Jesus himself is ruling the earth from Jerusalem.
That's right.
And this is something.
That's
conservative,
right.
liberal, we can say this is something. A lot of Christians say, I would die for Jesus. But it's, how many young Christians today in the United States would say, I am willing to die for this country? We just went past Memorial Day. You know, how many people, 30 or under, would say, the principles that we have laid out in the founding documents of this country, I'm willing to die for freedom of speech, freedom of the right for my Muslim neighbor to be able to go to mosque. I mean, that's actually part of the freedoms that we have in the United States. But again, when that rage comes over people, they lose all sense of rationality, and their primary effort is to fight against Christians, to fight against conservatives, to fight against Donald Trump, and it is destructive to the values that we all actually agree on.
Yeah.